Well, hello. Welcome to the Cellar. You'll notice that tonight is, I gotta put that vape away. You'll notice that tonight's numbered 95. It's the 95th numbered one that I've done on YouTube as a Curmudgeon. There's 4 or 5 other ones I've done, convention reports or whatever. And I'm not going to be doing another one for a couple of weeks because I'm going to be gone. Various places, AppleCon next week, and back in the Quad Cities in Illinois the week following. So the next one that I do, well, after after I get back, we're going to call it number 100, and it's going to look different. I'm letting Benjamin from Biggest Fan Productions, who puts all this together for me, I'm giving him carte blanche to dress it up. Gonna be same old me, but we'll see if we can't make it look different and better. Anyway, so I'm not going to be here for a couple of weeks, and when I get back, I'll give you a report on AppleCon and see what I'll let you know what the Mississippi River looks like in the Quad Cities. Several things to talk about. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to break one of my rules, but I'm going it this way because it's more legal to do this. I don't know. I can't think of a non-threatening word for the fact that I look in on Facebook every once in a while and see who's screaming about what. But I also look to see who's, saying good things. Now I read a quote on there that I want to share, and I want to give credit, and that's why I'm sharing the name, and I hope I pronounce it right. The quote is by a gentleman named Frank Scacolosi, and it goes this way. The dragon ampersand is like a flag for intelligence and imagination. It's a better virtue signal than any political pin or ideological icon, precisely because it transcends everything. When you see it on someone's shirt or bag or laptop, you know you're about to speak with someone who's bright, analytical, imaginative, and who preserved a sense of wonder from their childhood. These things connect us regardless of social status, education, financial class, race, sexuality, and religious affiliation. I can think of few other things in life that transcend in so many dimensions. I read this and I was dumbstruck. I wouldn't even try to say it any better. This is, of course, was in reference to, we were talking about the crazy pastor in Tennessee and what D&D was and all that. And I imagine probably in reference to the thing on PBS that's going to be on in October. And it was revisiting the old scares back then. Yeah, I'm going to be on PBS. I still can't get rid of that idea. And so as I've been looking in on the crap that's been going on, and the good stuff and the bad, crap is a general term I use. It doesn't really have a pejorative, much of a pejorative, very little pejorative aspect to it. But there are some things that I'm also going to address later this evening, specifically in response to a question that was sent in. But there's a whole lot of crap going on about D&D being too white, too old guy, too male straight, and not inclusive, and 5e panders to the social justice warriors, and some of them are, it's like the unbearable caucasity of Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I hardly know where to begin. I'll tell you what, I'll begin. I'm going to jump to a question that's later on because it's so relevant to this right now. And that is an individual, and from the handle name, could be either male or female. I was wondering what your opinions are about Dragon issue number 3 articles. I had to go back and look them up. And thank God I have the CD set, because I haven't had it anywhere near a complete set for years and years. And the articles, Women in Magic and The Idiot. How common was this sort of attitude back in the day? All right. I'm going to explore and explain some context because it has bearing on the other about D&D being too white and too old guy and et cetera, and et cetera. Now, the article was in question about women in D&D was written by a gentleman named Lennon Kafka, who still posts quite a bit. And I've known Lenny for a long, long time, and he and Gary were good friends, much longer than I knew Gary. And I'll explain the article. I'll give you the general gist of it. Women can't throw rocks as big as guys can. Women don't have charisma; they have a seduction thing. Women can be better in certain things. Really, the only thing that they were ranked down was that they couldn't be as strong as a man, and they actually had some advantages, and it wasn't meant to be sexist. You have to think of the context of 1976. It's the bicentennial. America's feeling really good about itself. I'm not going to argue with the sociologist whether or not sexism was present. What it was, 1976 was 1976. In that context of 1976, yes, we were trying to get females interested in the game. The game was only 2 years old. Not even a full 2 years. Pardon me. The game was not even a full 2 years old. How had the game been born? The game had been born with a bunch of guys from Minnesota and Wisconsin and Illinois getting together in those various 3 locations and playing war games. Those were guys. I never, ever saw a woman playing a war game. RPGs came out of wargaming. Whether it was boards or minis, it was wargaming. I don't know what we'd have thought in 1975 in Carbondale if a woman had showed up at the club and said, "Hey, I hear you guys play minis." We'd have probably said, "Yeah, sure, come on in. What rules do you know?" Meaning which systems, because there were so many. So we were trying to get all right, get back on track. Consider this, that the game was played by those guys. Other guys who heard about these guys came to their get-togethers, which became known as conventions. I was one in 74. I came to a very early Gen Con, the first one that was playing D&D. I played the game. I took it back to my college club, which was all guys. It wasn't because we didn't try to talk to girls at the activity fairs. They came by to look at the pretty soldiers, but unfortunately, that was the end of it. So this article, Women in Gaming, was a sincere attempt to make playing D&D more attractive to females, so they weren't feeling it. The field wasn't level playing with a bunch of geeky, nerdy guys. It was what it was. It's so easy, and I'm a history buff, major, teacher, etc. It's so easy to go back and look at behavior just as short as 40 years ago and go, oh, how horrible, without taking into account the evolution and progress we hope we've made in those 40 years. But it was a legitimate attempt to interest ladies. It was the middle of the sexual revolution. Okay, that was still going on. Magazines were pushing the limits. Movies were pushing the limits. It's not that we were pushing the limits of sexuality, but we were trying to push the limits of gaming to get women interested. And it was an attempt. The other article, let's see, what was that again? The Idiot. All right. That one, I can certainly see. Today, I wince. I'll say this about my now self. I spent 20 years working to build an organization here in Cincinnati that worked with people with disabilities and both physical and learning. The Idiot was suggested as an NPC. Today we would use the word fool, because the word fool has never had a connotation attached to it for someone whose mental capacities are not up to what's considered the norm. I'm treading very lightly here. I am sensitive to this. Like I said, I spent 20 years working, and I taught by choice. And when I was subbing, I especially there were several teachers that taught special needs that asked for me when they had to go somewhere, because I'm sensitive to this now. It's not that I wasn't sensitive then. I didn't use words that are now horrendously out of context, out of use. As an example, during those 20 years, especially for the first 7 to 9, we had to change our stationery 4 times because words went out of fashion. Couldn't use this word, couldn't use that. Back in the day, we wanted a person that today we would call the fool. The guy that would, doing antics and cutting up and that, who would provide a distraction. They were considered, they were given as thinly disguised NPCs. Nobody's going to sit down. Oh yeah, I want to play the idiot. Just give me 3s and 4s and all my stats, and a bunch of hit points, because I'm pretty much immune to pain. No, nobody would do that. It was NPCs. We put, especially in those early magazines, of which I kind of went back and revisited a couple of, we put a lot of things out as NPC ideas, knowing full well that players would pick and choose some of the specialty things that NPCs could do. And they later morphed into what became skills and abilities. And I understand skills and abilities now. Pardon me, I'm dry. And it's a dew-flavored kickstart the last little bit to make sure I don't be nodding off, but it'll probably happen, or yawning, but it'll happen anyway. Pardon me. Back. It was not meant to have the awful connotations that the words have today. Words change. Case in point, gentle boy coming out of the Corn Belt in the Midwest, boot camp 1967, Great Lakes, Illinois, thrown in with guys from Kentucky, Tennessee, New Jersey, New York. When I first heard the word sucks, which is in such common usage today, it was a very pointed, very sexist, sexually pejorative term. It was short for a phrase. When it was used in the Navy, it had a lot of clout. And a lot of these guys from the East Coast used it the same way. That's one word that has really changed from what I first learned it as. And I don't believe that I learned it as some, isolated pocket of East Coast meaning. There's other terms that I don't, care to go into. Certainly not in this. Keep that in mind when we were doing that article. Today we would use different terminology. Not quite a jester. Jester did it as a living. This was somebody you went and hired. It sounds terribly horrible today, but it was somebody you kind of hired as an expendable NPC that none of us really worried too much about afterwards. It's amazing how many pack bearers and stuff kind of got abandoned over the years. Now, I went there because of this controversy that's going on about D&D being too white, too old guy, too straight male, and that that wasn't inclusive. Okay, well, yeah, guilty in some regards in how the hobby began. It was 99.95% white for the first couple, 3 years. That makes it all old guys now, because those couple, 3 years were like 73.5. Okay, I'm talking about the guys that played it before it was codified. So yeah, it's unbearably Caucasian in the old guard. All us old guys were all white. Mike Pondsmith is the first black game designer with published work that I ever met in the entire hobby. Now, if there's others out there, I just haven't had the opportunity to meet them yet. The hobby is very, very white. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was more inclusive. I wish other people, youngsters of color, felt like it was something in interest to them too. Some of the old guys, some of the guys that not so old but play the older games, make the argument that 5e is in response to the social justice warriors, etc. No, 5e is in response to what sells. The ancillary companies, the companies that write product to support the main lines, if they're jumping on 5e, it's because it sells. Who it appeals to is not, it's not an issue. None of those ancillary companies that I'm familiar with that I know anybody in, not one of them would purposely write for what's become known as social justice warriors. Wouldn't happen. Now let's let's go somewhere entirely different. As Monty Python would say, and now for something completely different. I nearly swallowed my vape when I came across the D20 butt plug, Torquematic, for adult games. Lord have mercy. My first question, because they were kind of ovoid in the dice containing portion of this tool. Pardon me. Looked to me be occasion for a lot of cock dice, and they would be hard to read and require rerolls. I only saw D20s. I did see a comment about wait till somebody had to roll 66s. I just and just curiousness as to who thought about it. Okay, here's one that I had a cow when I read it. I recently joined a group where our DM basically had a premium PC deal where if we paid $2.99 a session, she would award us additional XP and chances to win rare items in game. I can't afford to pay the premium service, but I don't want to fall behind the other players. Any advice? Yeah, my first answer is find another group. I don't have a problem with a DM that wants to run games for money. Whether you're going to a gaming bar, which there are lots of them. We even have one here in Cincinnati, and you want to get paid like $20-25 a session, whether it's by the players, whether it's by the bar owner, and and some food and whatever. That's hey, I'm not going to condemn that. That's fine. In fact, if I could get that gig, I'd probably do it. I hear about people pipe dreaming about being a hey, if somebody said, hey, come to here, here's a ticket, come here, and we'll fly out here and we'll give you some money to eat on, and I'd certainly look at the gig. I don't care if you call me a game whore. Think you got a pretty narrow mind. However, that said, this, in this instance, is bullshit. Find another group. This is so unequal and so unfair on so many levels, and there's so many metaphors I could use that I'm literally at a loss. Why this person thought it'd be a good idea. Does this person only want to associate this DM, who's not worthy of the name in my opinion, only want to associate with people who can afford it? Talk about elitist, snobbish shit. That's heinous. Level playing field. That's the whole thing about role playing. Everybody sits down that first day with a blank sheet of paper, tabula rasa. My Latin's long, or Greek. Anyway, it's old. Anyway, the blank sheet, literally, pencil and dice, and we all start out even. Find another group. That's got to be such a tiny aberration. I'd be surprised if you ever found something that crappy again. Let's see. Oh, I did that one already. I love that you do your vids and share your knowledge and wisdom. Okay. And I wish that Gary could have done some dids before he passed. Well, yeah, I bet Gary would like that too. It'd mean either he lived considerably longer or he had access to, back then, he would have needed a camera on a tripod and damn near a studio, because, geez, the video cameras have come so fast, so in so short a period of time. I have a friend, yeah, I do, called, whose commercial name is the Fantasy Smith, who used to do columns for me in a couple of my magazines back in the day. Who's a marvelous figure painter and figure modifier and figure sculptor, in that not just modifying figures by bending and repositioning, but by adding to them and subtract. Anyway, he's going to start a video thing. He came over and says, "Oh, what do I need? And what do you use?" Well, I showed him, but what I use isn't quite what he needs. So I told him, I said, "You need a good microphone. You need a little camera that you can put on a tripod, a small tripod, set it on the table, and show what you're doing." And that's how far it's come so fast. Yeah, it would be great if Gary could have, but technology wasn't there. I'm grateful that it was. Okay. So this is from way back at number 78 about having another guest. That must have been the night that Jim Wampler, the Mad Mage, came on, and we're planning to do another one of those. Here's one saying, "I appreciate you going to GaryCon. It's good to see you there and talk to you once in a while. Hope you enjoyed the boulet." If that's the one that was in the neat little wooden box that you came up and gave me at the very end of the con, and that, yeah, I did. I do. I have it, and I really like the little box. In fact, that little box went to one of my grandchildren because it was perfect for putting a little treasure keepsake treasure thing of hers in it. Yeah, well, I haven't been talking that long. I don't know why they're falling together. Well, I'm always glad to go to the cons and talk. I'm beginning to become a little concerned about GaryCon and where the direction it's taken. I hope I'm not wrong. The GaryCon seems to be drifting away from celebration of Gary and more of some of the 5e and the Twitch people and the Hollywood types. I was a little upset about the legends and whatever, and none of those people are legends. So I'm hoping GaryCon doesn't lose its roots, forget its roots, and remember the guy that we were celebrating, the guy that we named the award after. I'm going next year, of course. Next week, just a few days, I'll be in Cornish, Maine for AppleCon. Going to see a bunch of my friends out there. I can't believe all these extra people that are starting to pop up. You're not going to miss the party, the Cider Fest, the party, the lobsters, the party. Oh, yeah, we're going to play a bunch of games. I'm going to teach some people new games that they don't know yet, and I'm going to run some games. It's going to be a great time. Cornish, Maine, all weekend, next weekend. The weekend after that, the reason I'm not going to be making one of these is because my wife and I are driving back to the Quad Cities. That's in Illinois. That's Moline, Rock Island, and East Moline. And then, well, actually, it's really, there's 5 cities there, Quint, but nobody. I grew up when there was 4, and now they try to get everybody to say 5. And it's Moline and Bettendorf, Iowa, on the other side of the river. And up the river is LeClaire, Iowa, which is where the Pickers, the American Pickers, had their first store. So that's where I'm from. And I'm going back there. She's going back to her 50th reunion of her nursing school, Lutheran School for Nurses. And I'm going back to drive. And a couple of her friends I'm friends with too. But they're mostly doing, ladies together thing. Though I think a bunch of us, I think I am going out on a river cruise with 3 of the ladies. But I don't get to go to the big dinner. So I'm hoping some Quad City gamers and I can get together and do something. I don't care if it's play some Ticket to Ride at the bar while we're eating pizza and drinking beer, whatever. But I'd really like to game because I've never actually actively gamed in the place of my birth. Odd, isn't it? Let's see what's else going on. So it'll be back in 3 weeks, and we'll have a different look. I don't even know what it's going to look like. So we'll all be surprised. And let's see, what else? Is there anything else that I needed to talk about? Jeez, I hate to say goodbye for 3 weeks, but I guess I covered everything. Yep, the timing's just about right. I won't be writing any rules that require that funny dice shaker, just so you know. I'm still trying to figure out. Pardon me. My allergies have really been kicking up the last 3 days. I'm still trying to figure out who thought that would be fun and who plays the game that they use that in. That may be some stuff you don't even want to think about. But hey, what I say all the time. If there's consent, no animals being injured, and you're having fun, go for it. Dodata Govi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.